It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of April 21st, 1995. We've got 8 movies to look at today, so we've got a jam-packed show, so let's not waste any more time. Let's jump right on into it, and we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, which is Sandra Bullock starring in While You Were Sleeping. So While You Were Sleeping was basically the testing grounds to see if Sandra Bullock could be a leading actress, following her success in Speed the previous year, and considering that this was both a critical and a financial success, I guess it worked out pretty well, and that's how it slowly but surely evolved Sandra Bullock into the Sandra Bullock that we know and love her as today. And she really does make this movie work. So the movie overall is very good. It's very formulaic, it's very cliche-filled for a typical romantic comedy, but it's a nicely done romantic comedy. It's one of those ones where you can let the flaws of it being very formulaic, not really all that too unpredictable, you can let that slide here because everybody in here is making it work so well. Like, I like this concept that Bullock basically falls in love with this original guy that she was going to try to marry, even though the guy never even knew he even existed. And then throughout the course of the movie, she ends up falling in love with her brother. And Bill Pullman, I never really thought he could play these type of romantic comedy roles, but her and Bullock's chemistry really does work very well here. They both work off each other very well. The cast overall is great here. Like I said, you got Bullock, Pullman, Gallagher, Peter Boyle's also in here, Jack Warden. Just a nice little cast here, and the movie does play it very simplistically. It doesn't throw any big curveballs at you, or doesn't fall into. It falls into very much of the same romantic comedy cliches we're kind of used to by this point, but the way the film plays it out well enough that you can let that aside and actually enjoy the film for what it is. It is a nice little film, and John Turteltaub directed this movie, who also did Cool Runnings, and slowly but surely he was starting to grow his craft as a director. This is the guy that started off in the spotlight with Three Ninjas, and then he went on to do Cool Runnings, and then this movie, and then it follows with Phenomenon, and his career just kind of kept growing and growing after that point. It's a nice little film. It's a nicely made romantic comedy that doesn't really... It's not a groundbreaking film. It doesn't do anything entirely new or different, but it works because the actors are so committed to this. The writers are committed to this. It's a well-made film. A lot of good funny moments here. Good romantic comedy all around. Good chemistry all around. It's a nice film. I can't recommend it enough. Definitely check it out if you can, While You Were Sleeping. So, with that said, let us move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Kiss of Death.
Come on, baby. Give me a kiss.
Oh, I'll give you a kiss, all right. A kiss of death!
Okay. I know I have to throw in my little bi-monthly reference to The Critic, but, come on, you have to admit that I had to do it for this particular thing. But in all honesty, here is the real Kiss of Death with David Caruso, Samuel L. Jackson, and Nicolas Cage. You know, honestly, I would have said that the Critic reference to Kiss of Death, which is a much different film than this, probably would have made more sense than this movie. But no, actually, this one, I was actually kind of surprised on how much I enjoyed this one. This one didn't get the proper respect it did at the box office. It was kind of like a mixed reaction from most people. Like, it wasn't a big hit, but it wasn't a big flop either. Neither was it critically, but most people kind of forgot about it. It kind of came and went, despite the presence of people like Babette Schroeder, who had done Single White Female, Reversal of Fortune, and Richard Price, who would later go on to write Casino that year. And it's actually kind of a pretty good movie. It's a nice neo-noir crime thriller film. And for David Caruso, who had a pretty rocky 1995, he left NYPD Blue for a movie career, and this was one of the movies that he starred in, and then, of course, he followed it up with the infamous Jade, which we'll get to when we get to October. It kind of killed his career for a little bit, and then he kind of resurfaced later on in the 2000s with CSI Miami for memeable purposes, but still was a better success than what this ended up being. But like I said, the movie isn't terrible, far from it. In fact, I think the movie overall works for the most part. It does fall into kind of predictable territory. This is actually a remake to a 1947 film noir film of the same name, Kiss of Death. And I've never seen that movie, so I can't really compare these two, but it is pretty good what they do here. It's a visually pleasing looking film. You do like these characters a lot, including Nicolas Cage, who I think really is the breakout star of this movie. He had a big year in '95 too, because he did this, and then he followed it up with Leaving Las Vegas, which eventually won him the Academy Award. We'll get to that one eventually when we get further into the year. But you also have Sam Jackson, Helen Hunt, Ving Rhames, Stanley Tucci, Michael Rappaport, just a great cast here, and a really compelling story and some great visuals to go with it. This is a very good-looking film. Is it a great film? Not really. There are some flaws in here, a lot of notable flaws in here, but overall I thought the movie was surprisingly enjoyable. I really went into this with kind of lowered expectations, but the film actually ended up not being as bad as I thought it was. I'm glad I saw it the one time. Probably wouldn't watch it again on a second viewing, but I thought it was alright for what it is. I'd say definitely check it out if you go into it with the right mindset. So, with that said, let us move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is New Jersey Drive. Okay, so this is one of those ones where I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really say whether or not it's good or not, but I don't know, that trailer doesn't really sell the movie a whole lot. I mean, basically the trailer is selling it as, watch these guys steal cars and how easy it is and how much they go over the edge to do it. I mean, it doesn't really have a very convincing storyline, at least from the trailer alone, but I mean, it's got some decent reviews to it. It's got a pretty good cast involved, including Donald Faison, Heavy D, Christine Baranski's also in here as well. Spike Lee produced it, and usually when Spike Lee puts his name on something at this point, it's not going to usually be a terrible movie. And actually, come to think of it, like, I'm trying to think, has Spike Lee ever put his name on something that has been absolutely terrible? He's made some bad movies, but nothing absolutely horrible, at least to my knowledge. But so I don't know, maybe this could be something interesting, but I don't know. That trailer I don't think really sold it all that well. I mean, it's one of those ones where I think that the movie is much better than the trailer is letting on. Like some of the reviews I'm seeing is like, this movie is an expert on how cars are stolen, basically taking about 10 seconds, and it also is expert on how a smart and essentially prudent kid ends up inside of a lot of stolen cars and get into a lot of trouble. That was from the review that Roger Ebert did when I guess they reviewed this on Siskel and Ebert. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to go too much into it because I haven't seen the movie. I can't really say too much about it in terms of the quality of it because I need to see the film. I will say that trailer didn't sell the movie all that much, but then again, maybe this is one of those ones where the trailer does the movie a huge disservice. So that's pretty much all I got on that one. Let's move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is The Cure. So you've got two of the kid stars from two of the biggest hits of the 90s, Jurassic Park with Joseph Mazzello and The Client with Brad Renfro, and an idea that I think could have made for an interesting movie, but the movie itself kind of comes off as a little too manipulative, like it's trying to be like an Oscar baitish type of movie. And also, I kind of think this idea of doing a story about a kid with AIDS, I think by 1995, I think not a lot of people were really fully invested into the AIDS pandemic like they were, the AIDS epidemic, I should say, not the pandemic, the AIDS epidemic, which, compared to where they were at the start of the 90s, like where you had a bunch of shows and movies talking about AIDS and all that. By 1995, it wasn't really that big of an issue, even though it was still very much out there. And maybe the movie was a little bit too late maybe it was too past its prime for it to really come out. But as far as the movie itself goes, I've only seen like a little bit of it, but I mean, it doesn't look that bad of a movie. I just feel like it's kind of one of those movies that they tried to push for an Oscar, but it didn't really work out all that well. I will say the performances by Renfro and Mazzello from the stuff I've seen are pretty good. You can actually buy that they could be good friends throughout the course of this adventure, and there is kind of a fun concept there that you could easily be doing with it. But yeah, other than that, though, I don't really see a whole lot there to say that this is something that I really need to see the full version of. That's pretty much all I got to say about it. I mean, it's one that could be interesting, but I don't know. It feels a little bit too manipulative, too Oscar baitish type of a film is what I'm trying to say here. But I mean, I don't know. It could go either way. I might check it out one day, but I'm not gonna rush out to try to see it. So that is The Cure. So let's move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Leonardo DiCaprio in The Basketball Diaries. You've got another one of those movies where I've heard about it, I've seen people talk about it, but I've just never gotten around to seeing it. So another one where I can't really say too much about it, but from what I can tell, this is one of Leonardo DiCaprio's early leading roles. I know he had been in some supporting roles before this, like specifically What's Eating Gilbert Grape, but this was to really show whether or not this kid could be a top leading actor. And for the most part, I definitely can see it. Like, you have him in here, you have Lane Bracco, you have Mark Wahlberg in here as well, Bruno Kirby, Juliette Lewis, Michael Imperioli, again, Michael Rappaport's in this, Ernie Hudson. It's it looks like it could be something interesting, although I'm seeing a lot of mixed reviews on it. And it's one of those films that later on down the road, when we started getting into these high school shootings, specifically Columbine, and then what happened at Heath High, people tried to use this movie as well as Natural Born Killers as part of the reason why why we had those shootings, and that ended up being complete BS. Like, if Jack Thompson, the guy who filed a $33 million lawsuit, thinking that this plot and the plot of Natural Born Killers caused this Heath High school shooting, and that case was later dismissed because obviously I don't want to say that that's part of what happened, but from the little bit I've seen, it's hard not to think that, honestly. But again, I'm not going to delve too much into that because, like I said, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really say whether or not that is the case. But I mean, it doesn't look like it's a bad movie. It just looks like a movie that will probably benefit mostly from the cast rather than the script, which doesn't look like it's that strong. Like, it's trying to send a message out there that they don't know what the real message needs to be. But again, I can't delve into too much because, like I said, I haven't seen it. So another one I'll definitely check out one day. But for right now, it's a movie that came out this weekend, so I acknowledge that it came out this weekend. So that said, on to the next movie, Burnt by the Sun. Once again, one that I have not seen, so I can't really delve into this one, but this is a notable film because it won the grand prize of the Cannes Film Festival in '94, and then later the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in '95, and it actually did spawn a sequel 16 years later, Burnt by the Sun 2, so it has a legacy to it, but like I said, I really do not know too much about this one, so another quick one here, can't really say anything about it, but it does look nice, though, visually, so anyway, let's get back to some movies that I have actually seen, and we'll start off with the first movie of the last two that we have, and that is Frank Whaley and Kevin Spacey in Swimming with Sharks. So this was part of a very good year for Kevin Spacey in 1995 because this was the year that also had The Usual Suspects, and which he won an Academy Award for, and he was also in Seven. And then you have this movie, which is probably the lesser known of the three movies that I mentioned, but should definitely be up there with the other two because this is a pretty damn good movie. Like, anytime Kevin Spacey can play the asshole boss and just make you hate him so much, he's doing his job well because, man, he's terrific in this movie. Frank Whaley's also very good here, playing the new assistant. You also have Michelle Forbes, and you see Benicio del Toro in one of his early film roles. Just a really good movie. Very funny, very much a black comedy, some good thriller aspects, and it's just a real fun movie. You love seeing Frank Whaley's character getting revenge on this asshole by the end of the movie. It's just so amazing what this movie is able to do. Like, it's so brilliant, it's so funny. This director, George Huang, has actually done a lot with Robert Rodriguez. He's produced some of his movies that came out later after this, but it's a brilliant friggin' movie, man. I love this movie so much. A very underrated film. Definitely check it out if you can. Swimming with Sharks. Can't recommend it enough. So, on that note, let's move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is the documentary Crumb. I mean, this is one I don't really need to say too much more about because everyone's already talked about this as one of the greatest documentaries ever made, and it definitely is one of those great documentaries, like directed by Terry Zwigoff, who would later go on to direct Bad Santa. He was the only one that will allow this guy, Robert Crumb, to actually film stuff with him with his consent. It's a very interesting movie on so many levels. Like, it's this idea is you're following this family around. It's a film that's very uncomfortable at times. The stuff that they get through in this movie, it's just really well done stuff. It's a very different documentary than you would see from any other documentary that came out around this time period. And just like with another great documentary that was screwed over by the Academy Awards, Hoop Dreams, they didn't nominate this one because why would we change the way we do things? Well, I mean, well, this actually did cause a media fervor to actually tell them to revamp the documentary nomination process. And just like with Hoop Dreams, man, this is a movie that is about a family. You're following this family through these realistic situations. You get so invested in the situations that go on with them. You try to get a grasp of what this guy's whole life is and how he became this guy that he became prevalently known for. And it's just such a brilliantly deep, dark documentary. That's something that you can't really replicate as much as you think that you can easily do. And the fact that this movie didn't get the proper respect back then, just like with Hoop Dreams, it's a shame. It's one of the reasons why you cannot trust the Academy Awards even nowadays, because they always look at these movies and then they pick it always seems like they acknowledge their existence, but at the same time they always give the winner to like the safest pick possible. That's specifically in the Best Picture category, which that's a whole different subject altogether that I could easily get into, but I won't do that because we'd be taking way too much time on this. We're already spending a lot of time on this particular one. So yeah, it's a very good movie on so many levels. Bottom line, Crumb is an amazing film. It's a deep, disturbing, very well presented film. It's a very intelligent film, a very smart film, very nice film too. It's just such a great film that you got to see to really appreciate what a good documentary really can do. And this is one of the best documentaries you will ever see. I highly recommend checking out Crumb. You will not be disappointed by it. So on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and just like this week, next week we'll have another set of 8 movies, including some notable films, including Ice Cube and Chris Tucker in Friday, John Carpenter's Village of the Damned. We also have Top Dog with Chuck Norris, Quentin Tarantino and Destiny Turns on the Radio. Actually, 9 movies here, because I've now seen the 9th one. Pyromaniac's Love Story, The Underneath, Picture Bride, Search and Destroy, and Moving the Mountains. So we have 9 movies to look at, so prepare for another big one next time around. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.